Coming up this time on Art Rocks, a Baton Rouge native who's made an international name for himself in contemporary art. We'll consider the rhythms of jazz and visit a Florida museum dedicated to contemporary glass art. These stories are up next on Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith from Country Roads Magazine. We begin with a man born and raised in Baton Rouge, but Matt Kenyon had to spread his wings to take a place at the forefront of the American contemporary art scene. Kenyon now lives in New York and teaches at the University of Buffalo. He returned to his birth city to exhibit a collection of works that have earned him a place among an elite group of contemporary artists who work with emerging technologies. Here's Matt to pick up his own story.
I started out as a painter and a printmaker. As I moved through my studies and following my curiosity, I started to acquire an interest in kind of emerging technologies. Well, video, for instance. Some of the works take advantage of tiny little video cameras that suddenly had become very inexpensive. I could buy them as an art student, and because they were small, I could do things with them that you would never do with a more expensive camera, like put it in your mouth or hang it out the window of a moving car. Artists have always been pushing the limits of technology. Making art with technology is different than the way we normally use technology. It's a way of kind of taking this tool out of the realm of kind of commerce and using it in a way that kind of shows us something about our world, but from another angle. So the project Enough, when you look at Enough, at first it just seems like one of these ubiquitous zip tie handcuffs that we've seen, unfortunately, on the hips of law enforcement officers at protests, at border crossings. And these zip tie handcuffs are similar to the zip ties you might have in your tackle box or something like that, but they're used to zip tie handcuffs of people when they arrest them. And they're disposable, they're plastic, and in my opinion, they facilitate the over-policing of communities of color and people who are new to the United States. And so what I wanted to do is turn those handcuffs into a protest object. And so I did some research on some of the original early sound recording tools, these wax cylinders that would record audio, the things that were precursors to the player record, and found a way to encode the audio into the geometry of the zip tie, so that when the zip tie is pulled shut, instead of making that ubiquitous zipping sound, it says the word enough. Tide is a project I made in response to the 2016 flood of Baton Rouge. All of my family's here in Baton Rouge, and they were all impacted, as so many people were. I was out of state watching this through media, through broken cell phone conversations and things like that. And I set about creating this sculpture that is a 10-foot tall champagne glass pyramid. And the champagne glass pyramid normally is a symbol of opulent exuberance at like weddings or something like this. But I chose it because it's an incredibly fragile form. It's very hierarchical. And inside of each glass is a tiny little sculpture of a house. And these are actual houses either in Baton Rouge or in the city of Buffalo where I live. And they're made out of a special material, a polymer that has the exact same refractive index as water. And as the water fills the glasses, the houses move from being visible to becoming nearly invisible. My experience with so many people who were impacted by the flood, after the media and the news moved on, they felt completely invisible. And we have a lot of stories about trickle-down economics and about how rising waters lift all boats in the United States, and I don't buy it. I think the thing that trickles down most often from the top to the bottom are the negative effects of climate change, are the consequences of failed policy in providing for the most vulnerable in our communities. And so at the top of the ceiling is a pump that is activated by information that's driven by foreclosure and eviction data and also climate change data. And so it controls the frequency of the pump dripping. And over the month of the exhibition, the glasses will slowly start to fill and the houses will move from being visible to becoming nearly invisible. Super major. Well, I grew up in Louisiana surrounded by oil and gas culture, and I took it for granted. I thought everybody's town had a oil refinery that stretched from one end of the horizon to the other. And I'm glad that we don't yet live in a culture where that's the case, but family members that work in the oil and gas industry. My brother Doug drove a boat and helped with the cleanup in the Gulf. And I think there's this dream of endless oil. And I think a lot of marketing and a lot of the big corporations sort of push this idea that it is endless. And we know, and science tells us, that if we just continue to burn the remaining resources, we will make life on Earth uninhabitable. And so I wanted to take something that first looked like the laws of gravity had been suspended, and then to show that kind of dream as a nightmare. And I like to tell people that it's a little cheap illusion in the gallery to point out a larger illusion that these corporations are constantly pushing over on us, that this oil comes out of the ground like honey and is free of consequence. And hopefully get people to think creatively and critically about our own patterns of consumption and to hold those corporations accountable for the destruction to lives, to environment, and livelihoods. Spore is one of my earliest projects, and it's a project I made with a collaborator, Doug Easterly. Spore is a self-contained ecosystem for a rubber tree plant purchased from Home Depot. And as many of us know, Home Depot guarantees the plants that they sell. So if it dies, if you don't have a green thumb, you can bring the plant back with your receipt and get a living one. Doug and I connected the life cycle of the plant to the Home Depot stock value. At the end of the week, if the stock value for the Home Depot Corporation goes up, the plant received water. And if it doesn't go up, it received no water. And if it died, we would return it. What was really exciting about that piece is that because it was connected to the live stock market data, and that was a difficult thing to do back in 2004, it was before smartphones and things like this, it surprised us because the plant kept dying and we didn't know why. And then finally we figured out that the stock value was going up so fast, it kept drowning the plant. And what we only figured out later was the United States was experiencing an unprecedented housing bubble. Everybody was spending money at Home Depot, putting in new countertops and things like that. The growth of the corporation was too much for the organism. Coquizit is a robotic umbrella that moves across the floor of the gallery by opening and closing. And on its belly, it has a pH sensor, it has a video camera for an eye, and it's programmed to seek out puddles of Coca-Cola that I had placed on the gallery floor. And when it finds the Coke, it drinks it up through a mouth in its belly and sprays it through a nozzle on the top of the umbrella where it rains down in the gallery and onto the umbrella. And over time, the Coke eats through the umbrella and it drips down onto the circuits of the robot and it short circuits and dies. Coquizit follows the marketing and the messages to consume and to consume to the point where it can consume no more. The robot is a stand-in for a person. And the umbrella starts off as a shiny, branded umbrella, but as the Coke eats through the umbrella, it's made of a special material. It starts to take on almost like skin-like qualities. And it's encouraging us to think critically about our patterns of consumption and the role of marketing in our lives. Log Rule is a microprint project. What look like lines are actually microprinted text, and they contain 5,700 individuals who lost their lives to COVID. And the form of the paper is logarithmic paper. And logarithmic paper is a special kind of graph paper that's used in science and engineering to chart exponential growth. And so, as we saw during the pandemic, the way we represent the curve, the way we represent the growth of the virus and its spread, has a direct effect on policy. It affects our ability to judge risk. And this paper is sort of substrate that the data scientists use to calculate this risk. And although it looks like an empty page, it's a very heavy project. And as we've lost over 1 million United States citizens to COVID, it's something I want to memorialize. In 2015, I was privileged enough to be accepted as a TED Fellow. The TED Fellows program helps take people who are maybe at mid-career and helps amplify their message. And they're scientists, they're activists, they're artists, they're writers, they're musicians, and they're all these intersections between. I was able to go to the TED Global Conference in Vancouver and share the Notepad project with the audience, and also share it with politicians and activists and thought leaders. And the video has been seen something like 800,000 times or something like that. Notepad looks like an everyday yellow legal tablet of paper, but all of the horizontal and vertical ruled lines are microprinted text, and they contain the details of individual Iraqi civilians who died as a result of the US invasion of Iraq. I was born in Baton Rouge. I went to Southeastern Louisiana University. Coming back to Baton Rouge, I never even hoped to dream of the level of reception that I had. The opening was amazing. We had over 750 people in attendance. The gallery was so full of people, I became very nervous about the champagne glass pyramid, but everyone was wonderful and respectful and had amazing stories to tell. I was able to talk to so many people about their experiences with the themes of the work.
Our lives are tremendously enriched by enjoying the creative endeavours of others, so here are some of our picks for notable exhibits happening soon at museums and galleries in our part of the world. For more about these and loads more events in the creative space, visit lpb.org/artrocks. There you'll find links to each episode of the program, so to see or share any segment again, visit lpb.org/artrocks. Pretty much all of us know what we like in music when we hear it. But for a minute, let's consider things from the perspective of a man with a deep appreciation for the actual building blocks of music and the stylistic possibilities contained within. Darren Kramer delves deeply into the sounds of jazz and offers tips on how exactly to listen to a song.
Jazz, I think it starts getting different with harmonic intensity.
That's Darren Kramer.
Not oatmeal, but maybe oatmeal with walnuts and cinnamon and honey and all sorts of crazy things in it.
He's a jazz musician.
Trombone is really an identity for me, I would say.
Turned jazz aficionado.
I just have always been attracted to the way it makes you feel.
Music has been a part of his life forever.
Ba-ba-da-ba-da, ba-ba-da-ba-da. Baba da baba da baba doom bee bee doom bee da.
And now, he's getting other people jazzed, traveling around the Denver area, giving workshops he calls sonic tonic.
Sonic meaning sound waves, and tonic is traditionally a medicinal substance to make you feel better.
The gist? How to listen to jazz.
Top of the tune. It's moving.
Using the four main elements of music.
Rhythm, melody, harmony, and lyrics.
Something different. Bridge.
To create a better experience for music listeners.
Let me show you how to listen like a jazz musician. Let's go inside the music and realize we're not playing the melody, and it's not just three notes, it's more maybe there's 27 different notes in it. So it's a little more advanced.
Okay, we had to put Darren's knowledge to the ultimate test. Our team collected music samples from Denver's 5 Points Jazz Fest. And
So this is going to be fun. Yeah, so you've brought in some clips from the recent 5 Points Jazz Festival, and we're going to listen to a couple clips and then do a little mini sonic tonic on these so that we're saying, what would somebody listen to, or how would I listen to it? So here's our first one.
He's the kind of guy where he give you everything, your strength, your heart, and share all of your love. Till death do you part.
I like it. It's mellow, serious groove. I'm noticing the cross stick on that drums. Believe it or not, I'm listening right past her. As a musician, not just a singer or a general music listener, I'm kind of going different levels. So I love that little that guitar that's happening. It's happy. We're in a major key. Her voice is great, great nuance, great tone. She has a nice little story she's talking about there. And this particular recording, I'm not hearing enough bass for me. Plus, we're listening on my laptop speakers. But I noticed that my music engineer side comes out and go, I want to feel like I'm laying on this like bass sound, right? All right, here's a new one. Dig it. That's kind of old school, like a folk jazz, right? And some of this stuff, gypsy jazz, when they have a lot of different instruments like a violin. This had a clarinet in it, and it's so fun. It's got its own sound. So maybe you don't even know what a clarinet is. You haven't noticed that. Woodwind instrument has a reed, way different than trombone, but that gives this its own vibe. And there's a sax, tenor sax. There, that's the clarinet. And it's fun, it's happy, right? And here's the last one.
I got to know why you've been stalling all the time. It's oh, do you lie? I don't know who you're seeing on the side. Today I got to know who you've been calling, 'cause it take you time.
That's my kind of thing. Funky jazz, right? Vocalist sounds very good. What do I notice right behind that is some of those hits in the drums. He's not just like phoning it in, hey man, we're kind of playing. No, man, he's like, check out these hits. That snare and those on the hi-hat, they're going to do it again probably. Horns are hitting on those downbeats, right? So this, to me, is way more interesting than, just boo boo dip beat. Great sounding bands, and they're all quite different as we're hearing, right? So jazz doesn't just mean one thing. So if maybe you have an idea that you don't like jazz, maybe give it another try. There's lots of jazz going on a weekly basis in downtown Denver and in Boulder.
In St. Petersburg, Florida, the Imagine Museum highlights the history and the artwork of the American studio glass movement. With over 500 pieces of glass on display, visitors get to experience this remarkable art form in its gorgeous, glittering entirety. Here's the story.
I think it's important to understand even what studio glass is. As I tell the visitors as they come through, they hear the term studio glass, but then have no idea it was even a movement. So why do we call it studio glass is the first question. In the early 1960s, there were ceramic artists and other sculptors who wanted to work in the medium of glass. Prior to that time, believe it or not, all the glass that was being manufactured was being produced in factories. So in 1962, Harvey Littleton was the first pioneer who determined that he was going to create the furnace that could go and be in an artist's studio so that the artist individually and independent from the factory could create their art. And that's pretty much how the movement was born. Believe it or not, Dale Chihuly was one of his first students in the first MFA program at the University of Wisconsin in Madison to study glass. That was a pretty important period of time in those 60s when, these creatives had come together and with the idea that they were going to transform sculpture by being able to make it work in glass and have the transparency and the reflection of light that prior to that time had not been possible. Hence studio glass, furnace in the studio. The museum opened at the end of January in 2018. We have a wonderful benefactor by the name of Trish Duggan. Trish decided that she wanted to open a museum. Then she determined that it was going to be a studio glass museum, and she worked with a colleague, Corey Hampson, who is the president of the Habitat Galleries in Royal Oak, Michigan, and they discussed what would be the collection and what they would like to show, and Corey helped her understand that there was not another museum in the United States that showed the history of the studio glass movement and showing that solely. There's other glass museums and they have the history of glass, but they have it from the beginning of time. So there was no museum that just was focused on this history independently of anything else. Corey set out and worked with all the artists and collectors in the area and put together a collection of 500 pieces, 55 artists covering 55 years. And so Trish bought the collection for the museum, and that's what you see here today in these galleries. Part of the collection we had was of Paul Stankard's work from the earlier part of his career to the later part of his career. So you actually can see an evolution of his work, as well as when you're in the first 9 galleries down here, that you can see the evolution of many of our other artists' work and technique that they put into it. Paul Stankard is he is the maestro of the paperweight, and I really just hate to diminish that concept by saying paperweight, because really they are beautiful orbs and why would we call it unseen worlds is because there's basically in that tiny little glass ball is a world that few people see. I mean, it's the world that Paul Stankard has put together in his mind. And when you look at those glass orbs, all of the flowers, the insects, the human forms, there's little tiny ants. All of those elements that are in there were actually done with a torch and a rod of glass, providing all of those extra details. So when you look at it, they're just magical worlds inside of these really perfectly formed glass balls. It's one of those shows you'll have to get close, to truly appreciate it. We have this opportunity, not only having this gorgeous collection, but we have the opportunity to create programming that does inspire, that does uplift. Not to just really have to be focused with studio glass, but we can open that door a little wider that gets to our, the spark of our humanity, which is the arts in a much broader sense.
And That's going to do it for this edition of Art Rocks. But remember, there are always episodes to see and share at lpb.org/artrocks. And if you want to go deeper on the art and culture of Louisiana, Country Roads Magazine is a resource for discovering more of what's on offer in the arts, events, and destinations all around the state. Until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thanks to you for watching.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.